Hey, welcome to Friday. Should have been Thursday, but Thursday didn't work out. You know how it is. Anyway, glad you're with me today. And as I say, come on in to my little world. Maybe it's my little brain, but my little world. For just a moment, and we'll share a thought or two. Do you ever notice things don't always work out the way you think they ought to? You're going down, you think you got it figured out, you start doing things, find out maybe you didn't read the instructions, at least people like me. And somewhere along the line, things don't go exactly as planned. Maybe even if you read the instructions, they still didn't go the way you thought they were going to go. That's kind of the way yesterday turned out, but in the end, generally, everything works out all right. Especially when you trust the one who's in charge of it all. I want to tell you a little story. It's about a young man who grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. There were some good things about it. It was a large family. His father loved him, cared about him, gave him things and so forth. But his father also had children by several women. Tried to make them all into one family, but it didn't always work out. You know how it is when you start blending things together, they don't always work out the way they should. And sometimes family members don't get along. He and some of his brothers didn't always get along. They didn't see eye to eye, and that was sometimes a problem for them. But anyway, in their home life that might make people in a soap opera blush, they lived. They grew up. But it was still a problem. Somewhere along the line, he kind of became the outcast of the family and went his own way. And through a course of events, found himself traveling down a lot of different roads. Some of them pretty tough. Some of them, they were all right. But some of them pretty tough. He even found himself on the wrong side of the law at one time. Found himself incarcerated. It was a problem. You know, you got to learn to live with where you are, and that's kind of the way he went about it. Ultimately, he was released, built his life again, got to be in a very good position, worked his life along, had a wife, had children, and so forth. He'd been distanced from his family for quite a time, and then through a series of circumstances, he was back in touch with them again. It wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't something that was just casual. But in his mind, it was a good situation. And something to apply and something for which he should take advantage. And that's exactly what he did. Life wandered along for a time, and the family depended on him, got things together, worked things out. But with the passage of time, some of those in his family began to worry. Being he was in such a position that they needed him, they got worried. Would he continue to be as he had been? Well, they just didn't know. So they talked to him about it. They even kind of twisted things a bit to try to push him in a position to where he would be what they needed him or wanted him to be. And ultimately, he set their minds at ease. That's the kind of guy he was. Maybe you recognize the story, even in the way I tell it. Maybe you recognize that's kind of the story of Joseph. I didn't tell all the details and all the places he went, but that's pretty much the story of Joseph. When you think about it, thousands of years ago, we've got this soap opera life going on, and out of that life comes someone who is an outstanding character and has so much to offer by way of example and by way of understanding to us. And the way that he dealt with his family, the way that he dealt with his situations in life, ought to be one that we ought to study. You know, when it came down to the point, after his father had died and his brothers worried that he might retaliate against them for the bad things they had done to him much earlier in life. Listen to his words. In Genesis chapter 49 and verse 19, Joseph said to them, 50 and verse 19, Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant it evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about, as it is this day, to save many people alive." Well, the wisdom that he showed in that is amazing. And I know it's easier to see something in retrospect. But sometimes we need to listen to what Joseph had to say right there. For we get in the middle of something where things aren't going our way, people aren't treating us right, or we're finding ourselves somewhat the victim of what we would think was abuse. How are we going to use it? Joseph said, maybe the bad things that are happening to us are the things that we need to have happen. Prepare us for the things where we can do the most good down the road. I know we've heard that kind of thing before, but Joseph lived it. He lived it and he applied it. He didn't sit around that we know of and cry, "Woe is me." Instead, he took advantage of the opportunities that were there and did his best with them. And in the end, he recognized that what he had gained was something to be used. Not just for himself, not so that he could look at his brothers and say, "See, you need me now," but so that he could do something good for them. It wasn't about apologies. It wasn't about making up for what had been done. It was just simply an opportunity to do good. You know, the Apostle Paul gives us an admonition later in life. Let's do good to all men, as he writes to the church, the Christians in Galatia. Let's do good to all men, especially those who are close to us. The household of faith, he calls it. But let's just do good for people. We can sit around and find all the abuses and all the things that haven't gone right. Everything that somebody has said or done wrong to us, or how we've been mistreated, and we can try to retaliate, and we can go back, and when something bad happens to them, we can say, "Good enough for you. Have you learned your lesson yet?" Or we can say, "I'm in a position now, I can help you." And let's just consider it providence. I've learned, and we've done. Isn't that the best way? Isn't that the way it ought to be? You got to love the story of Joseph. Yeah, it may have been something of a soap opera beginning, but when it comes down to the end, you say, now there is the character we need in life. You meant it for evil, but God worked it for good. That's pretty good. Pretty good application of life, isn't it? I hope it's one that you and I can use and use well. It may take a little effort on our part. May take a little character building, but I bet we can do it. Let's work in that direction. Hey, I'm glad you're with me today, even a day late. But I'm glad you're with me, and we'll look for more things a little further down the road. Have a great, great day and be a blessing wherever you can.